Hello guys, welcome to my channel. So in this video I am going to explain about one of the important feature of Java 11, that is HTTP client. Okay, so actually this is one of the most useful features which was introduced in Java 11, that is HTTP client. Why it was introduced means, for example, if you want to send any HTTP request to external REST APIs and download the data from the server, or anything you want to do, or you want to communicate with external APIs, then this is the API you are going to use in order to communicate. Okay, so first we need to understand why HTTP client was introduced, because if there is a problem, then the Java people come up with a solution, right? So first we need to understand why it was introduced. So basically, before Java 11, if you want to communicate with external APIs, then you will be using HTTP URL connection or any external libraries from Apache, like Apache HTTP client or OK HTTP. Okay. So how you are using it, like you are creating an URL is equal to URL, then URL dot open connection, then you are downcasting it to HTTP URL collection, and you are setting the request method, and you are sending it. So actually this type of communication, it contains a lot of boilerplate code which was very hard to read, and it's not beginner friendly, and the developers wanted a modern HTTP API built directly into Java in order to send this HTTP request or to communicate with external APIs. So this is the reason the HTTP client was introduced. So you can see this is the reason HTTP client was introduced, and it belongs to the package called as java.net.http. Okay, and there are three important classes in this package, that is HTTP client, HTTP request, and HTTP response. Okay, so if, for example, if you want to communicate with an external API, you need to follow the three steps. So first step is creating a HTTP client. Okay, how you will create the HTTP client? So I'll go take you to the code. So you can create with this code. I can see HTTP client is equal to http dot new http client. Okay, there is a method called as new http client. With this method you are able to create a HTTP client. Okay, so what it will do means, this HTTP client object, it will send you the HTTP request. So once after creating the client, you need to create the HTTP request. Okay, so after creating the client, you need to create a HTTP request. How we will create? You should be using http request dot new builder and dot URI, then URI dot creator. So this is the external API we are going to call in this, and this is a get API. And after everything is done, you need to use dot build, because in the builder pattern you are using that build, right, in order to package everything into single thing. So that is why you are using build, and it will return the object of HTTP request. Okay, so you have created the HTTP client, you have created the HTTP request. Now you need to send that request. Okay, how you will send that request? That is using client dot send. Okay, there is one HTTP client is there. No, there, in that there is one method called as send. Okay, client dot send, what you are sending? You are sending the request, and also you are receiving the response, HTTP response dot body handlers dot off string. Okay, so whenever you send this request, so what you will get? You will get the response, right? So that response you are storing it in the HTTP response object, which is of type string. So that is what I have written over here. Okay, and once you get that response, if you are printing that response, it will print something like, I'll show you how it will print. So I'm running this code. You can see it is printing the response. The response says user ID is 1, ID is 1, and the title is this one, and body is some kind of code. And since I am also printing the response.http response.status code, so it is printing the status code as 200. 200 is for success status code. And if there is any error, so then, for example, instead of JSON, I'll put S1. Okay, I'll try to execute that. um, See, it will give the error because connection exception thread in main, and yeah, it will give the exception. So So yeah, this is how it will work. Like if you are not giving proper URL, then definitely it will throw this connection exception because it is not able to communicate properly. So now it's working fine. Okay, so you got to know like how you are creating how you are sending the HTTP request to external API. Means first you need to create a HTTP client. Okay, on sort of creating the HTTP client, you need to create a HTTP request. Here you need to specify the URL and the method, and you need to use builder pattern. And after that you will be using a send method in order to send the request and receive the response. Then you are printing the response. Okay, this is one way. And another, if you want to, this is the get request I am setting. If you want to do it for the post request, so you can see I have written something like this is the JSON I am sending in the post, that is string JSON, and the title is Java, body is HTTP client, and the user ID. And if you are sending in the body, you need to use a triple quotes like this. Okay, the same thing, HTTP client is equal to client, HTTP client you are creating, and HTTP request dot new builder URI, this is the URI. And here I am including the header as well, that is content type is application.json, and I am using a post method here. Here I have used get method, here I am using a post method. And since I need to pass the body, I am passing the payload like this. Okay, then build same, you will be using client dot send request, sorry, client dot send method, you are passing the request and receiving the response. So same thing, you will be getting the response body and the status code. Here you need to get status code as 201. Why? Because 201 is for created. You can see it has been created in the server like Java HTTP client, and this is the ID it created automatically. Okay, and 201 because why you are getting, I am printing the response dot status code. 201 is for created, that's why you are getting this. So this is how you can send post request. And now let's talk about anon as asynchronous request. Okay, so this client dot send method, so it will send you the synchronous request. That means if anything is if you send one request, then the other request has to wait until it is completed, that is it is blocking. So if you are using a client, there is one method called as sendAsync. Okay, you can see sendAsync, it is accepting HTTP request and completable future. Okay, if you are using this sendAsync method, then your application doesn't need to wait. Okay, because whatever the request you are sending, it will run on the background in a separate thread. So that is the advantage of using asynchronous request with the help of sendAsync method. So this asynchronous request is useful for multiple API calls and microservices and high performance applications. Why? Because since this is asynchronous, there is no blocking, and if there are any subtasks, those subtasks can be run on the background thread, so that the performance will be improved. Okay, so I think you understood about the asynchronous request. So let's try to look at some of the real world examples. Okay, for example, real world example is when you are using this HTTP client, when means when you want to connect to an external API. Okay, for example, you have a Java application and you want to connect to a weather API, that is an external API, and you want to display the weather. Okay, in this case you will be using the HTTP client in order to connect to the weather API and get the response from that, and you are displaying the weather in your portal. And another thing is stock market application, like stock market applications like Grow, Zerodha. So what they will do means they'll call the external stock API like some Bombay Stock Exchange API, and they will get the latest stock prices and show it in their app. So that is one of the examples I can give it for HTTP client. And what are the advantages of using this HTTP client? So actually HTTP client is built from Java, and it is easy to use. It supports HTTP2 as well, supports WebSocket, and it supports asynchronous programming because we can use sendAsync method, and it's a cleaner API and no external libraries are required. So because nothing is required, it is coming from the Java itself, you can use it directly without adding any external jars. So these are the advantages of using HTTP client. And if anyone asks what is the difference between send method and send async method, so that is client dot send. Here send method is this send method. So this send method will it will block the current thread while sending the HTTP request and response. While receiving the response, it will block the current thread because it is synchronous. And send async will run asynchronously. That means it runs on a separate thread. And the main question is, should I use Java HTTP client in a Spring Boot application? Yes, you can use, but the thing is, if you are writing a plain Java applications, then definitely you can use that, because this one Java HTTP client is a lightweight client which is built in Java. But in the Spring Boot applications, they have their own client that is known as a REST client. That is what recommended in modern Spring applications. They have something called as a web client for asynchronous programming as well, from the Spring team. So you can most of them will be using REST client for communication in the Spring environment. Even you can use the HTTP client as well. So I think you have understood what is HTTP client, why it was introduced, and how it solves the problem of sending request to the external API. So I think if you have any doubts, please type it in the comment section, and thank you so much for watching.